Oh, Eswatini!
In the heart of Southern Africa, a kingdom prepares to welcome the world. From the 7th to the 14th of May 2026, the Kingdom of Eswatini will host the Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States African Group Parliamentary Meeting, alongside the first African-European Union Parliamentary Assembly, bringing together legislators from OACPS member states and 27 European Union nations. This historic gathering unites 106 countries on single inter-regional platform.
This meeting will launch a new institutional and regional setting that will shape a new phase of political cooperation. Hosted at the International Convention Center, the Assembly will advance our shared priorities and contribute to the commitments under the Africa-EU collaboration. I look forward to welcoming you to the Kingdom of Eswatini.
Set against the backdrop of the Ezulwini Palazzo International Convention Center, this landmark event reinforces Eswatini's growing role as a center for diplomacy, dialogue and development. With His Majesty King Mswati III serving as champion for resource mobilization within the OACPS, Eswatini continues to lead efforts towards sustainable growth and strengthen global partnerships, a leadership that has already secured the kingdom the honor of hosting the OACPS Summit in 2029. Eswatini, connecting continents, shaping conversations, and building a shared future. The world meets here.
Dignity, pride, and flame. From your hills to the valleys, your spirit so strong. You welcome the.
If we create platforms for meaningful engagement, we must move beyond rhetoric and design policies that are co-created with young Africans and Europeans, ensuring their voices shape the agenda.
Thank you, Co-Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of General Nyambuya. My name is Nonhlanhla Mlocha from Zimbabwe. Co-Chair, distinguished members of Parliament and esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, let me say a few words about a challenge that is also a great opportunity, how mobility and education can shape the future of Africa-EU partnership. Co-Chair, let us face the simple truth. Europe population is aging, with only 20% of its population being under the age of 20, while that of Africa is young and growing. Nearly 40% of Africans are under the age of 15. This means we must give our young people the tools to succeed. Education that is relevant, skills that are practical, and opportunities to move, learn, and work. Education and mobility go hand in hand. Education gives knowledge, mobility opens doors. Together, they create jobs, spark innovation, and build prosperity. But too often, mobility within Africa is blocked by weak infrastructure, underfunded schools, barriers that make it easier to hire talent from outside the continent than from the next door. That must change, and we must accelerate the Africa Union Free Movement Protocol and align it with continental free trade area. We need to unlock the movement of skills and opportunities across Africa. At the same time, Africa and Europe have made progress. Programs like Erasmus Plus and the Intra-Africa Academic Mobility Schemes are helping young people study abroad, build confidence, and connect globally. Zimbabwe has seen the benefits. Our universities are part of the initiatives like Great Green Africa, advancing climate resilience and sustainable development. But challenges remain. Scholarships are limited, visas are costly, and too many graduates stay abroad instead of bringing their knowledge back home. So here lies our responsibility as parliamentarians. We must facilitate and make mobility easier, simplify visas, recognize qualifications, and align align education systems. We must invest in schools that prepare students for real jobs, and we must manage mobility wisely. So it strengthens both Africa and Europe, not one at the expense of the other. Above all, we must put young people at the center of our decisions, because if we give them the chance to learn, to move, and to contribute, they will build a future that is fair, forward-looking, and full of promise for Africa and for Europe and for the world. I thank you.
Mr. Yitna Getoa, EUM Sub-Regional Director for Southern Africa and Chief of the Mission for South Africa. So please, you have the floor. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit more first on your function and then on the question we are debating here today. But a warm welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Yitna Getachew. I'm with the International Organization for Migration. I'm the Director for Southern Africa. I think many of you, if not all, would know about IOM. We are an organization that works for safe, orderly, and regular migration. We work on protecting people who are on the move. We advocate for regular pathways for safe and orderly mobility, and we would like to focus on finding durable solutions for displacement, including those that are caused by climate change. We have about 400 offices across 120 countries with 175 member states. All of almost everyone in Africa and almost everyone in Europe is a member state of the organization. Having taken that much time to introduce ourselves, I think for those of you who follow the discourse on migration, you probably have noticed that last week we had the International Migration Review Forum, the IMRF, that happens every 2 years, which is an assessment of how well the world is doing on the Global Compact on migration. At the same time, we were fortunate enough to release the World Migration Report, the flagship publication of the IOM. And some of the figures may be interesting to you. Currently, it's estimated, or we know, that there are just above 300 million people who are international migrants in the world. And while this has significantly risen in real numbers, it's still the same proportion of people who are international migrants as they were in 1990. For 40 years, the proportion has remained the same. What it means is that if there are, if the world was 100 people, 4 of them are migrants. Only 4. And
how many?
if the world was 100 people, only 4 are migrants, international migrants. 2 of those are male, 2 of those are female. Now, for 100 migrants, 60, which means 6 out of 10, are migrant workers. And of those 100 migrants, again, 3 out of 10 are under the age of 30. Now, what does that tell us? And we'll come to other figures in a minute. But what does that tell us? Migration, work, labor, employment is a major driver of migration. And I wonder why, to date, we do not make the presence or absence of irregular migration an indicator of how well we're doing with our economies. What is happening now, ladies and gentlemen, is that young people invest, particularly in Africa, in their skills and education. However, where they are, either there are no jobs or there are no jobs that fit their skills and education. And therefore, they make sometimes uninformed, other times ill-informed decisions to look for places where there is demand for their skills and education. Those two are not matching. And therefore, young people are flocking either to the cities or across borders, sometimes taking very dangerous routes to places where their skills and education do not necessarily match what business, what industry is looking for. That is our biggest failure. And because of that failure, there is underemployment, there is informality, there is irregular migration, and we have a huge problem of unemployment. The question then is, what is it that we can do to address this? It's easier said than done, but we have to have mechanisms that match this supply to that demand and not allow young people to move to places where the demand doesn't necessarily match their skills and education. For those who need to be employed, and the numbers are rising in Africa, and by 2050 we'll have 70 million additional young people entering the job market. There is need for upskilling, there is need for reskilling, there are new areas in which skills and education are needed. It's digitalization, it's green economies. We have to have a mechanism which consciously links labor market needs with what the education and skill system is producing. And there are some good examples already. You will see that teachers who are moving from Zimbabwe to Rwanda, you have the bilateral labor agreements with their own problems from Eastern Horn of Africa to the Middle East. But there are also the skills mobility schemes that have been put in place between Africa and Europe, North Africa and Southern Europe particularly, from which quite a few lessons can be learned and can be applied at scale. Our biggest problem is not being able to offer this at scale. I'll stop there for now. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, and good respecting the time. I was really frapped by the figures that you gave. 4 out of 100, 2 men, 2 women. Okay, we will try to win some time. The next one is a video. I hope the technical advisors are ready to show us. We have a very nice video message of Ms. Nardos Bekele Thomas, Chief Executive Officer of the African Union Development Agency.
Good morning. I would like to salute Dr. David Gordon Opunsa, Co-President of the African EU Parliamentary Assembly, recognized distinguished members of the African and European Parliaments, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I regret that I cannot be with you in Eswatini today, but I am honored to address this assembly remotely because what is happening in Ezulwini matters. Africa and Europe have been partners for decades. What this assembly represents is a deliberate choice to make that partnership more equal, more structured, and more directly accountable to the people it is supposed to serve. Excellencies, this is not a small thing, and I welcome this forum as the institutional space to act on it. Africa has the youngest population on Earth. By 2050, 1 in 4 people in the world will be African. This is not a demographic burden to be managed. It is the most significant development asset any continent has ever held, but only if we act with honesty and urgency. That demographic advantage becomes a dividend only when young people are educated, when they are skilled, when they're mobile, and when they're economically included. Right now, too many are not. And when we speak of mobility, we must speak plainly. Mobility cannot be reduced to migration from Africa to Europe. Real mobility means young Africans moving freely across African regions, accessing opportunities created by the AfCFTA, contributing to regional integration, and building the skills ecosystems that Agenda 2063 demands. That's why African Union Development Agency, NEPAD, is hosting the African Continental Qualifications Framework, a system for mutual recognition of qualifications and skills across borders so that an engineer trained in Dakar can work in Nairobi and a technician certified in Lusaka can contribute to a regional energy corridor. Intra-African mobility is where the greatest transformation will happen. At the same time, under the umbrella of Energize Africa, education system must undergo a fundamental shift from certification to capability. Through our Skills Initiative for Africa, which we call SIFA, we have deployed 100 million euro across 48 active TVET projects in 8 countries, benefiting over 22,000 young people directly. Through the creating opportunities for youth and women in Africa, operating across 5 regional economic communities, we are equipping young Africans with digital skills, entrepreneurial capacity, and access to finance. Through the Africa Critical Skills Bank, we are building real-time labor market intelligence so that what young people are trained for actually matches what economies need. These are not pilots. These are scalable models, and they are working. Excellencies, the African Union Development Agency, NEPAD, exists to translate continental frameworks into delivery, linking Agenda 2063, the AFCFTA, and regional integration to institutional reality on the ground. We do not just produce strategies, we build the financial and institutional bridges that turn policy into impact. In that spirit, I call on this assembly to advance 3 concrete shifts in the Africa-EU partnership. First, invest in and scale mutual recognition of qualifications. Make it the norm, not the exception. Second, treat vocational training, digital and entrepreneurial education as strategic co-investment, not development assistance. Third, build structured mobility pathways that are legal, dignified, development-oriented, and beneficial to both continents. Europe and Africa must not build a relationship of one-way traffic where African talent lives. We must build one where African talent circulates, grows, returns, invests, and transforms economies on both sides of the Mediterranean. The Energize Africa Fellowship shows this is possible. Young African professionals embedded in regional institutions, driving implementation from within, that is the model we should scale together. Distinguished parliamentarians, declarations are not enough. Use this assembly to shape recommendations that become instruments. Instruments for financing, for developing partnerships, and for measurable outcomes for young people. They are watching, and they deserve nothing less. I thank you.
Great. Yeah, my audible now. Thank you. Labatzala, Honorable Co-Presidents, distinguished members of the Assembly, and representatives of the OACPS and European Union. As we gather here in Eswatini for this historic inaugural plenary, we're doing more than just discussing policy, but we're designing the architecture. But we're designing the architecture of a shared future. With over 60% of Africa's population under the age of 25, our continent is not just a participant in the global economy, but we are its future engine. And I sit before you to recap the vibrant discussions of yesterday's Youth Forum. The youth have spoken, and their message is clear. They do not want to be passive recipients of policy, but they want to be the co-architect of this partnership. We cannot speak about mobility without acknowledging the sobering realities. The conflict, climate, migration nexus, it is real. Climate displacement from the Sahel to Southern Africa and protracted conflicts are driving millions into vulnerability. Too often, the lack of legal, regular pathways pushes our brightest minds into high-risk routes, where they face exploitation and tragedy. We must advocate for orderly, safe, and regular mobility, as outlined in the Migration Policy Framework for Africa. So as young people, we seek a partnership that respects the dignity of the migrant and values the potential of the youth. The African Continental Free Trade Area is the most significant economic project of our generation. By creating a single market of 1.4 billion people, it provides the scale needed for industrialization. However, a free trade area is meaningless if the people cannot move. As we implement the AU Protocol on free movement of persons, we must align it with our trade goals. If goods can cross borders seamlessly, the talent that produces, that manages and innovates those goods must be able to follow. So we are advocating for the right of establishment that allows an African youth to start a business in any corner of this continent and eventually to partner seamlessly across the Mediterranean. Our relationship with the European Union has entered a new phase with the Samoa Agreement, specifically Titles 3 and 4, which provide the legal mandate for human development and mobility. But the teeth of this agreement lie in the Global Gateway Africa-Europe Investment Package. With 150 billion euros in planned investments, we must ensure that these funds are not just for roads and ports, but for human infrastructure. We must link the Youth Mobility for Africa flagship to the EU AFCFTA Memorandum of Understanding. This is about more than just trade. It's about Team Europe supporting African integration through skills corridors where the EU's labor shortages are met by a mobile, highly trained African workforce. So yesterday, we heard a powerful call for grassroots representation. A central concern raised was that these high-level frameworks often remain trapped in capital cities. The youth from rural areas, local agricultural hubs, and marginalized communities feel invisible. Our mobility programs, therefore, must reach the last mile. We need decentralized access so that a gifted student in the remote village has the same opportunity to enter this talent corridor as one in a major metropolis. Furthermore, there was a massive wave of appreciation for Erasmus+. It is recognized as a transformative tool for brain circulation. However, the youth were unanimous. We must scale it up. We need expanded quotas, and critically, we need to address the visa hurdles that still turn this breach of opportunity into a wall of bureaucracy for many of our students. The gap must be breached by accelerating the African Continental Qualifications Framework. We must champion micro-credentials in AI, in green energy, and sustainable agriculture. We want an era where a young African researcher can move to Europe or to a European university through Erasmus+, gain world-class expertise, and return to an African innovation hub funded by the AU-EU Innovation Agenda to launch their own startup. As legislators in the room, you have the power to turn these frameworks into reality. So the young people urge you to decentralize opportunity, to ensure that the Global Gateway funds reach grassroots youth and rural innovators. We urge you to scale the success, to expand Erasmus+ and the Intra-Africa Academic Mobility Scheme to match our demographic scale. Thirdly, we urge legislators to harmonize the law, to push for the mutual recognition of diplomas and streamline visas to ensure dignity in mobility. And lastly, to bridge the AFCFTA, to ensure economic partnership agreements focus on value addition and the youth who lead these industries. The youth of Africa are not looking for a way out, but we're looking for a way up. We are the drivers of the AFCFTA and the guardians of the green transition. Yesterday's forum proved that we are ready to lead. Now we ask you to provide the political will for us to move. Let us build the bridges that allow talent to flow, ideas to circulate, and both our continents to prosper. Thank you.
Oh, Eswatini!
In the heart of Southern Africa, a kingdom prepares to welcome the world. From the 7th to the 14th of May 2026, the Kingdom of Eswatini will host the Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States African Group Parliamentary Meeting, alongside the first African-European Union Parliamentary Assembly, bringing together legislators from OACPS member states and 27 European Union nations. This historic gathering unites 106 countries on single inter-regional platform.
This meeting will launch a new institutional and regional setting that will shape a new phase of political cooperation. Hosted at the International Convention Center, the Assembly will advance our shared priorities and contribute to the commitments under the Africa-EU collaboration. I look forward to welcoming you to the Kingdom of Eswatini.
Set against the backdrop of the Ezulwini Palazzo International Convention Center, this landmark event reinforces Eswatini's growing role as a center for diplomacy, dialogue and development. With His Majesty King Mswati III serving as champion for resource mobilization within the OACPS, Eswatini continues to lead efforts towards sustainable growth and strengthen global partnerships, a leadership that has already secured the kingdom the honor of hosting the OACPS Summit in 2029. Eswatini, connecting continents, shaping conversations, and building a shared future. The world meets here.